So, report from the police. I haven't heard anything.
No, I haven't.
No.
I've heard nothing.
Report from Councillor Parkinson. Again, not heard anything.
Do we want to comment on Councillor Parkinson's support or not for the HS2?
It's a very good time to do it. Thank you very much for reminding us. I think it would be worth mentioning because I think we were quite surprised to receive an email from Councillor Parkinson saying HS2 is beyond the stages of stopping. As this has been clearly explained in this plenary by Craig Brown, which it never has been, all I can do at this stage is to mitigate for those affected. Well, I'm not aware of any decision being made for HS2. I can't imagine it's going to be within Craig Brown's remit, but I am very disappointed that our ward council appears to have given up any efforts to stop this dreadful scheme, which will paralyse Fitmere for a decade. And you know, it's like I described it right at the outset as an existential threat. It's massive for Fitmere.
And I think for the minutes it would be that it's an inaccurate statement.
Yes, I'd like to correct that.
That it is not past the point of stopping. It has not got border saying. Therefore, it is not in anybody's interest. And presumably, she's speaking on Cheshire East behalf, it's even worse.
Well, it doesn't put them in the best negotiating position either. They completely accept what's going to happen.
Do we want to follow that up in any way with her?
I
think we just for the minutes.
We did have a couple of very good letters published in the Sunday Telegraph and in the Times.
Yeah.
We did offer Kate the opportunity to countersign it, and she declined. Nothing robust.
I was happy with that response.
Yes, I'm not putting off the 2 minutes in.
2 minutes in.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, finance. Current financial position, please, Jack.
Selection time. Current financial position. I've copied the monthly summary. Usually I try and convert those figures into a table that's a bit more readable because I don't like all these NAs and percentage figures, which it don't work. But it just takes some time and I've not had time to do it this time. We are halfway through the year, as we'll come on to in a couple of items' time. So that is our current situation in terms of receipts and expenses. Just one point to note, right at the bottom, the VAT line, you'll see there are £1,359 VAT outstanding. In fact, in the last couple of weeks, we've had a refund of £18, which I claimed for. So that's going into the bank. If anyone has any questions about any particular item.
Right, move on. 7.2.
7.2 payments. They're all scheduled there. A number of significant payments. As you can see at the bottom, item G, the insurance premium went up because of the revaluation of these two properties. It's gone up quite significantly. And also at the bottom is the fee for temporarily closing the public footpath, which has already been paid. So can you approve those, please?
Vote, please. So, yep, all okay. 7.3.
7.3, yeah, it being the half year, you have to make a decision on the precept for next year at your December meeting. So I usually try and put a report to you the month before to raise the issues that are involved. And this year, I think for the first time since I've been parish clerk, there are some significant issues. I've done on one of the tables that I copied round, in the table I've copied round, on the first two columns are projection of expenditure and income for the remaining months of the current financial year. That shows that there is a shortfall of approximately 3,600 when you take expenses against revenue, and then trying to convert that information into a draft budget for next year, taking into account, as the first one does, taking into account things like increases in energy costs, then it makes a quite substantial shortfall in terms of a draft budget, which I think means that one way or another some actions need to be taken. I've noted the kinds of options that there are available to do that, and that's simply to use any budget overrun to be accommodated from the council's general fund. That is rather less than it used to be. There's a little bit you might be able to use there. You could allocate some of the general expenditure, as it were, to one of the earmarked reserves, which are noted at the back of the report on the previous item. I listed and copied to you the earmarked reserves, the current schedule. So if you wanted to divert some of those monies to deal with the shortfall, then that's another option. There are areas of expenditure that you might want to try and cut out, and there are higher costs for the village hall, which are almost nominal, I would say, and certainly in terms of energy costs that we're now being charged. And then the other factor is the possibility of increasing the precept, which has stayed the same as an overall figure, 13,650 for the last 5 years, I think. What tends to happen is, as the number of dwellings in the parish increases bit by bit, and we don't have very many, but we do have a few, then that 13,650 gets divided among more residences, which means the actual amount per dwelling falls slightly every time you do that. So that in effect, the contributions from individual households has gone down very slightly over the years. Overall, the figure that is paid for the parish council through the precept is for a Band D property is £35 or so. So that there is a potential there to increase it, but clearly that's up to council on whether they wish to do that. The figure I've put in that in the report, which said if you wanted to increase the precept to 15,650, that would be a almost 15% increase in the precept, but actually in overall terms about a £4 increase in annual cost per Band D household, so it's not an enormous amount. So I think these are really issues that have to be considered and discussed, and I'm happy to hear any comments at this stage. And then for the next meeting, I will look again at the draft budget in response to any of the comments that are made.
I suggest we just go around. Sarah, do you
Yeah,
want to kick it off?
I decided to phone a couple of village halls to find out what their hourly rates are. The average is £10 an hour, but then I tried to sort of look at what we were offering, and Compact hired their small room for £8, and that's probably a similar size to this. So I think we could definitely look at an increase on £6 an hour. I think people would be quite accepting of that because fuel bills have gone so high.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
Alison?
I would agree that we could. There are areas we can definitely look at that we can tweak some costs. Obviously, no one could have expected literally the 4% increase in fuel costs. This is a single skin brick building, which meets a field behind us. We've got new windows, so hopefully that will help with. Obviously, there's an outlay to begin with, but hopefully it will help with some of the energy being dissipated through the windows. Things are turned off in between times. The pavilion is completely switched off. There's no power on in there at the moment, and there's no water. So saying whilst it's not being used in the winter months because it has no heating. So
Andrew?
No, nothing more, so I'll bring it back in control next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've not done anything at the moment.
So I think basically just see where we can
Mhm.
look at things.
do you want us all to come with specific ideas for discussion, or
That's
are
probably,
you putting together another report, Jack, for us to consider?
Well, I would. I think I'm not sure it was last year or the year before, we did have an informal discussion
I thought we did.
between meetings to just chew things over, and then as a result of that, I prepared a report for the December meeting.
that might be the best bet then.
I'd prefer to do that.
Are we all happy to have an informal meeting? And we can bring the results of that to Alison?
Yeah.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, so if we go with that.
Yeah. So just to clarify, that's not a meeting where any decisions will be made.
No.
No.
It's chew things over, and then as a result of that, I will make some
It can't
adjustments
be
to the
made
draft
because we
budget.
have to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that will then be brought back for decisions
Yeah.
to council in December. Yep.
Well, not everybody's here anyway.
Yeah, so we'll let Chris know. So I think he'll have some ideas as well. 7.4, laptop.
Yeah. I've mentioned the laptop a couple of times in the past. Screen is over on yeah, so the two items. The laptop is showing its age. The screen is now going to malfunction, and I suppose I could go and see if I can get it repaired, but I'm not sure that's worth the effort or the expense of doing so. So I wonder whether it's time to replace it. So I've suggested, if you go along with that proposal, a purchase budget between £500 and £600. Excluding that, we don't pay that. The mobile phone has been suggested by members in the past. I looked at two options on that. One was to buy a very cheap phone, which you end up kind of renting an allowance monthly, or the alternative is to buy a reasonable smartphone and renting a data SIM. I think the second option is much more cost effective over 2 years, 3 years. And so if you're minded to go along with that idea, I suggested purchasing a phone. There's a Nokia that's around £120 and renting a SIM. And that, of course, is not in the current budget. It's one of the items I mentioned in the finance report. So it's really a question of whether we actually include that in this year's expenditure or in next year's budget, or whether we don't.
So should we,
The laptop is a bit more pressing than the mobile phone.
should we deal with that in 2 points? Any comments
I
on
thought
the
we,
laptop?
okay, I thought we'd agreed to do it.
I think the laptop.
No, the phone.
No, let's do the laptop first and then we'll, so any comments about the laptop?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Can I-
You need a
It needs a
work.
work. Yeah.
Right,
Especially with
just-
the change in operating system recently as well, so you need a.
Make sure it's Windows 11 compliant.
Yeah.
Can I go straight to a vote on that as to whether
Yeah,
everybody's happy with
Yeah.
getting Jack a laptop?
There's a proposal.
Oh, sorry, can I have a proposal?
Yeah.
Andrew and Alison, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Okay, fine.
thank you.
And then.
And then the phone, I thought we had agreed, it was just which one we were going to look at.
You agreed, I think, in general,
We go
the general
for a phone,
approach,
but it's
yeah.
the route.
Yeah, it's the
smartphone.
Which-
smartphone.
So you suggest that we go down the
Smartphone, a reasonable smartphone, not
Yeah.
not a Samsung £1,500 one.
Yeah, just sort of a,
Yeah, it's a bog standard, but it's a smartphone, and the data's fairly cheap.
just to make this clear, it's so that we take, this isn't for Jack, this is for the parish, this is for people who've not been, this is for the parish clerk, so that we will have a specific number rather than a personal number for the parish clerk, and if Jack, or when Jack decides that he's had enough, that phone number will be moved on to the next parish clerk. It also means that when he's away, that a member of the council who's around can be given that phone, and so can still be contacted on that phone. And
Jack has a right to a private line.
that's our reason behind it, so that we're taking this away from personal to something that is specific to the council. But I just thought it worth explaining because some of you haven't actually been in on that previous discussion. So I'm going to
You have something to
suggest,
say, Andy?
have we got anything to say?
Well, then I'm pretty sure we've decided it.
I thought
Well, in that case, can I have a proposer and a seconder for Jack's
Yeah.
favoured option, which I'll take Sarah and Alison. Can I have a vote, please?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
it's highly important.
Jack?
I mean, it's the same process as happened with the laptop.
No, I don't.
Okay. I've never had a game on my phone yet.
Planning and licensing applications.
Yeah, I circulated the list. A couple of the householder applications that were on last month's list have been approved with conditions since last meeting. New applications come in for a single storey extension at number 1, the Orchards. So if you're minded to, you could make comments on that particular proposal. It is a fairly ordinary, unexciting kind of proposal in planning terms. So I'm not sure there are any comments that you wish to make on that.
Alison, would you like?
Can I just can we go back to 22/2444M?
Yeah.
It says not yet determined dash.
That's really deleted.
Yes,
Yeah, that's a typo. Approve the condition.
It is,
Sarah, have you any comments?
I have no comments on the order.
apart from,
No, I think other than we would presumably
Our usual.
our usual thing about neighbours and
Yeah.
yeah.
Cheshire East taking note of neighbours' comments.
Paul?
No.
Sarah?
And also on the schedule is the licensing application
Yeah.
mentioned by Andrea.
Can I just ask something? Didn't we have
There's a
something
very
similar a
similar
few
one,
years
and
ago
it was
by
a
two
suspect
guys in
company.
Warrington, wasn't
Exactly.
it?
We did.
Yeah.
I had the very thing here.
And I think we weren't exactly enamoured by that.
No.
one
The,
either.
the difference with that, well, among the differences with that are that one was proposing hours between 12 and 1:30 in the morning, provision of recording music at any hour, selling of alcohol between noon and 2 in the morning. This one isn't quite as extreme as that, but we did sort of a lengthy objection.
I think that
To
they
that
had
proposal.
accounts for more than 1 year or something, that was a relatively.
They
new
haven't,
company.
the same. It's not the same company, but it is a
It's
new
a
company.
similar
It hasn't filed any accounts,
business model.
and it gives, and there is no evidence of any.
There's no track record.
No, there's no track record. There's no prior trading as such. There's no.
No, it's exactly the same.
Similar,
isn't it?
similar,
Pretty much.
different people.
Different people,
Well, I'm
similar
assuming different
approach,
people 'cause I don't
different
know
hours.
Absolutely.
But different. Yeah.
Can I-
Do we know how many days the
Nothing to
showground
give
is
us
in
any
use?
confidence.
We don't.
No.
When
asked.
when Helen Shaw was councillor, she was keeping track
Right.
for us.
Right.
But she didn't hear anymore.
So
So
they're limited to how many days?
28 days a
28
year.
days a set.
During
yeah.
COVID period, it was temporarily 56 days,
Oh, was it?
but I think it reverted to 28.
Right.
Can I ask for your specific views? Sarah, we'll start with you, please. on this.
Like I say, we've had something like this before, and what are the dates this festival is supposed to be on?
This one is the 27th to the
27th.
30th of July. If I had to pick dates, I'd have to
Yeah.
If you want to know, it's the first week after schools are broken up.
Yes, and
27th to the 30th, I was wrong.
Yeah, the reason why I was asking, because I was just wondering what other festivals are around here, because I go to a lot of festivals.
There's Creamfields, isn't there?
Greenfields.
That's roundabout.
Skip it wrong.
Oh no, that's August, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
August, about mid-August.
So I was trying to work out geography-wise who would be attending this.
Well, it'd be,
Yeah.
I
Have you
mean,
heard of these people at all?
I suspect, look,
Not this other firm. That's why I was trying to rattle in my head. Like you say, there has been an application before.
Don't think it was the same firm.
No, it's not the same firm. for when I was reading
Looking
it.
on the website, there is a reference there. Dubbing out is apparently
Dubbed.
is altering cars, vehicles, vans, lowering them on their
Yeah.
suspension.
That's what I
And I think that, well, it seems as though that's where this has come from, but how that relates to this particular event, I don't know whether it will be attracting particularly that
Did
group.
they mention cars at all?
there we go. Dubbed out community is this one, or VW community for all VW enthusiasts. I mean, what they're talking about with that, I'm not sure whether it's the same thing because I mean, I did have a Beetle years ago, and
The one? It was for-
and we used to go to meetings with the people, and they were sort of along the lines of it. They called V-dubs, didn't they? But I don't know whether that's necessarily what we're looking at. I think we're looking at more of a festival, and there's going to be music. And if, I mean, I've got it up here, 30th, a weekend family festival with big top tents, live bands, top DJs. For me,
We've got no confidence that this company has got the wherewithal to manage something of this nature.
it's not even the management, it's the music. I feel is going to be
Exactly.
quite.
It's totally
It's
disruptive.
going to be.
Do we still have the last,
Mhm.
could we adapt our response last time to suit this application, given the difference in hours, or?
Yeah, it was. We did a letter which complained about the actual consultation process. Because
Well, that's
as Andrea and I have corresponded about this, to inspect the application you have to go to Crew or one of the other offices. There's nothing online, there's just a summary online, which is open to, and we did complain about that, and I can't remember ever having a response.
I'm sure we didn't get
We
one.
wrote to the acting chief exec and executive director, and then there was a long objection.
Could we adapt
There may-
that at all? to
It
be relevant
can,
to say-
we can take out the same
I-
things.
I think that there may be some involvement with Volkswagens, because I found Dubbed Out Festival.
That's the one I've just mentioned.
Exactly, because this is all about music and booze and shows and acts and displays, so I'm sure it's the same.
So we talked about the hours, we talked about obviously noise,
The hours are different.
the
This is
experience
in
we've
the
had
air.
with truck fests, and then there was a religious event that happened, an event for bikers,
I personally think though.
traffic and all, those kind of issues, public safety, prevention of crime, protection of children, those were all covered in the previous
All valid
objection.
From a personal point of view, I think we just need to basically make the point that,
Cheshire East need to do their due diligence
Yeah.
first of all.
and that we don't think that this is a festival that with a group that's only just,
Did you see that they're already promoting it, but as
Yes.
will
yeah.
Oh, Winslow.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're sort of, well, they're promoting it in all
Okay.
sorts of different ways.
Yeah.
But I personally think, I think we need to just go through the same process we went through last time, making our points very clear that this isn't, I hate to say isn't wanted. That's where I'm going with it.
I think at some point I've asked Cheshire East about the 28 days and whether they keep a check on whether the showground uses up all the 28 days, or how, do they keep track of how their events relate to the 28 days? And I don't think they've got that, ever got a response to that either.
Sorry, Bill. Go on, Paul. Your comments on it.
Here's some background.
Sorry, can we just?
Sorry.
Yeah, I'd just like to get some more feedback from Cheshire East about what the checks and balances are on this sort of thing, and from the owners of the showground themselves, whether they're actually doing any, let's just say, due diligence.
Apparently there was one at the actual showground in June, so we can find out a little bit more.
Andrew?
I think for me, we should keep away a bit from the company who's doing it.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
just a company.
Yeah.
I think last time we had, our biggest concern was that the showground itself was not able to manage previous other events, not just music events, but events where music was either very loud and or continued longer than they told us it was. So I think in general terms it's about how the showground's managed as much as whoever comes on site. It was, I think last time, a concern that we had with how the people who stayed for the 3 days were managed, what sort of facilities would be provided for those people, and again, what the management of the site would be like. So I think just keep it at the showground and the ability for them to hold such an event rather than the people who are paying the showground to do it.
Well, they're not the ones
Do we
paying
still
for the
have to-
licenses.
do we still have to go?
I understand
I
that,
think
but it's still the showground, and the only reason they're there
It is,
is
but
because
that's-
the showground has essentially 28 days to use.
We can only comment on the licence and the application, the applicant, the application, not where it's going to be held.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Well, last time we
So read
certainly,
the.
well, last time we
I think-
certainly commented about.
But-
Sure.
Yes.
the wrong
Yeah, I think
event
perhaps
that
we could still
amended.
comment. We can still comment, can't we? I mean, it's,
Out of real concerns, live music, recorded music and supply of alcohol.
Yeah.
For 3 days
By anybody.
continuously? Yeah. 4 days, sorry. Thursday, Friday,
Can I
Saturday,
ask if that
Sunday.
amounts to an objection or comments? I mean, the members wish to object to the licence, or are we simply commenting saying,
Well, we can only object on the basis that we have no basis to say that it'll be run properly, because we haven't in the past. In the past, the evidence is, it is not run in a way, however a licence was issued, it wasn't run in a satisfactory way. I mean, the religious affair that turned out to be
exactly.
a
There was no
nightmare.
licence application for that.
Yeah. No,
No licence application.
I think we just have to go on past history that these
Well, I
things
even
are
said it all,
not
wasn't
run
it?
properly. They are an inconvenience to not just us, but a lot of the places around here. And I think we have to object.
if I said object on the basis that unless we could be made satisfied that everything will be satisfactorily managed?
Yeah, I think so. And I think
It's just when
I would urge you
licensing
to-
justices
I
or
would urge you to
whoever.
read the guidance that's given for objecting to applications.
Yeah, I
before
think
we-
I did
very
last time. I
tight.
read it last time.
Yeah. Very tight.
Sorry, and I can't speak,
Very
but
tight.
there are two points. Add to your.
Can I ask you to speak to us at the end of the meeting, please? I know we can add it. We can add it in.
No, we
It
can't.
would just help your discussion.
No, no. With the
I
risk
can't
respect
really-
of-
not
we can't make an
today.
exception
Sorry
for
for
you,
that.
we don't make the exception for
But-
other people if you don't mind.
I'll speak to you at the end anyway, Phil, and we'll get the point of
As
view.
long as you pass it on.
I promise that, but you,
Sorry.
Andrea did make the point.
Yeah. Right. Where have we got to?
I can't think we
So
should-
there's an objection on the broadly on the basis that we're concerned about the various things, the noise and the lack of control, potential lack of control and management of them,
Consider format.
along the same lines as the previous objection to the previous licence application.
I'd also like to see if we could get some more information about it. I think that's really.
But
important if
the
we-
objection has been by the 22nd of November.
Yeah, no, I'd still like to get some more information about it. Even so.
Their website
I don't
Website says nothing.
contains nothing, which
Yeah.
isn't helpful. I mean, any festival worth its salt has got background information already,
Well, you-
presumably, for
They're
20.
already lined up for the next school year.
Yeah.
Yes, so
Yeah.
they've
Yeah.
got all the background
That's why I'm
information.
finding it a bit strange
Yes.
that
It is.
if I recall last time, the actual showground committee actually objected to it as well.
Oh, did they?
Yes.
Can we make contact with them?
We'll
You know?
contact
Times might be
Could you
slightly
contact
harder. Times might be different now. They may be more open to.
See whether they'd object to
Do
that.
they know about it?
If they know they've got a booking on the 27th of July.
Yes.
Is it on their programme, potentially, if I recall? Yeah, good point, well made. I think their website's a bit lacking as well. Cheshire.
I'd be interested. I wonder what it would be useful to find out about this 28 days and how much they're using.
Oh, nobody, last time we tried.
No.
No.
Yeah.
No, we need to.
We can tell you afterwards.
Well, when you,
Yeah, tell us after.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if they're the point I'm thinking about on that is that if they are exceeding their 28 days, then that point needs to be made. Yeah. Anyway, we're okay with that. Let's move on. God. Right. Neighbourhood plan.
Yeah, I've got a very short
please.
statement, yeah. Some of the Neighbourhood Plan Working Group have met informally for a general catch-up, and a formal meeting will be organised for early November to set the next tasks and steps and formally report on where the plan is up to now. I don't know whether that's going to take place before the next parish council meeting, but hopefully. A date will also be set for the next open meeting whereby Pitney residents can attend to view the operations of the Neighbourhood Plan Working Group as per the alteration to the terms of reference, and we hope that will aid further resident inclusion.